Project. If you don't know what the Lincoln Project is, I am so jealous of you that you have not been in this bubble of awfulness for the last couple of months. Because if you follow politics, you've seen these guys all over your TVs, whether it's Rick Wilson, Steve Schmidt, I'm trying to think of John Weaver, obviously. And there's a few more. There's a few more notable guys who have been on the TV, and they're constantly bashing Donald Trump. And more notably, they're constantly telling people how they are morally virtuous and they're on the right side of things and how everyone else needs to be canceled. And my next guest really started the unraveling of the Lincoln Project, and we should all be very grateful to him for that. Ryan Girdusky, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Ryan, I want to go all the way back to the beginning here and have you lay this out for people. This all started from what I could see, and I think I've been following it since the beginning, from a tweet that you saw about the Lincoln Project constructing a database of Trump officials and staff that will detail their roles in the Trump administration and track where they are now. So it was kind of like a blacklist or a doxing project. And you saw that, and tell us what happened next.
Okay, so I want to go a little further back than that. So in May of last year, 2020, late May, John Weaver followed me on Twitter, which I didn't understand why. I was an open Trump supporter, but I kind of ignored it because a lot of people follow me on Twitter, and you don't keep track. Within hours of him following me, several young men started DMing me saying, hey, this is what happened to me. Please be careful because John Weaver preys on young men. I'm not as young as I look on Twitter, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I started pursuing the story, working with another journalist on a different outlet than the American Conservative, where I published the story ultimately. And I worked for several months on the story. And, I was asking a lot of questions to a lot of people within inner circles close to the Lincoln Project. And by August of that year, we came close to publishing the story. We had accumulated enough people on the record willing to go forward and work with us. And then we found out that Molly Jung Fast, when I say we, I mean the writer who was working with us at the time, Molly Jung Fast had heard about this and was making phone calls to friends of mine, seeing how the story can get killed. And how we can kind of usher the story out. She's an advisory board member of the Lincoln Project and the editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, and very close friends with many, many members of the Lincoln Project. So, story comes out. Right when the story's about to come out, John Weaver has a heart attack, allegedly, and he's in the hospital. We can't get a hold of him for comment. The editors of the outlet I was working with at the time said, "Hey, let's just play it cool for a week, see what happens, and then we'll try to get the story out next week." And in the end, all of the young men that were willing to go on the record originally all dropped out. They all said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I don't know why. They have never come forward to me and explained to me why, but they just all dropped out in that week. The story was then dead. So months go by into January, and that tweet you originally mentioned came out where they said we're going to keep a doxing list for every person who works in the Trump administration. That includes a lot of 20-year-old kids who basically were working there for their first or second job and were trying to build a life for themselves. And it's another way for the Lincoln Project to grift. And I was just irritated at that moment. And though I couldn't come forward with the story because I didn't have anyone on the record, I thought I should put it out there that the story was out there. So I sent out a tweet saying maybe I should tell the founding member of the Lincoln Project who is soliciting sex from young men in exchange for work, in exchange for a job, maybe his wife would like to know. And luckily enough, within a few hours, young men started tweeting that they also had been groomed or attempted to be groomed by John Weaver.
Now, Ryan, can I stop you for 1 sec? Because I made this comparison earlier and I was kind of hesitant to make it, but the more you talk about this story, the more I do think it's very reminiscent of the Me Too in the sense that how it started to unfold. People started to feel more comfortable coming forward because they were seeing other people go on the record.
Right. No one wanted to be the first one. Remember, the Lincoln Project is all lawyers with friends in the media and tens of millions at their disposal. They don't want their lives destroyed. These kids, I don't mean to say kids, in a negative way, but these guys are between ages of 19 and 22, 23, 24 at the oldest. They don't have the ability to fight back. They don't have a voice. So once one came forward and two came forward, I was able to write my story using their public tweets and everything that I had on background without people going on the record, and all the information I had accrued over the last, I guess, 5-6 months at that point, and was able to put out the story. And then since then, a victim of one of the people who was attempted to be groomed by John Weaver, he wrote his own story, and all conservative media picked up on it. I was on the Laura Ingraham show, and the Lincoln Project's reaction was utter silence. They just deleted John Weaver's picture from their website and said nothing. Following that, like the week after that, John Weaver gets a story out from Axios. Axios, by the way, I cannot believe, I'm disgusted with how they acted, because they were stenographers for John Weaver. They put up the story that he's gay and he's struggling and he's suffering and he didn't do anything wrong with any of these messages, and he's sorry if anyone felt uncomfortable. They were completely and totally fine. The Lincoln Project says, that's all we need to hear. It's fine. It's over. Luckily enough, the New York Times came around 2 weeks later with their story, sitting there and saying actually the ages, I thought the youngest victim was 19. The youngest victim was 14.
Yeah.
And they were, that's literally a child. A 14-year-old who was attempted to be groomed by John Weaver. And the most astonishing thing about this was, there's two astonishing things. One, I had 20 sources. Since then, I probably have like 35. The guy who wrote the story after me, one of the victims, he had about, I think his name is Scott Stedman, I believe his name is. He had about 60 sources. This other New York Times story had 21. There's over 100 young men now who have come out. This is beyond Bill Cosby numbers. There's over 100 young men who have come out who've been contacted by him in the last 5 years. This is like a frenzy. And the other thing I was astonished by was how many people already knew. When I started pursuing the story, I could not believe. I would say people, I'm doing a story on a well-known political consultant who is trying to be predatory towards young men. They would say, "Oh, John Weaver." It was the biggest open secret.
Yeah,
so
Ryan. I just want to stop you right there, because I want to mention this as something you tweeted today. By the way, I'm talking to Ryan Girdusky. He really was a huge part of breaking this John Weaver story. He was kind of brave enough to put it out there, even though he wasn't exactly sure if some of those people would ever come forward again. And it's turned out to be a massive story. The New York Times today says 21 men accused Lincoln Project co-founder of online harassment. But you mentioned this, Ryan, what you were just talking about. You said the friend asked, you were reaching out to someone and you kind of gave him the background of what the story was. And he said, "Oh, you must be talking about John Weaver. It was a total open secret that apparently everyone knew."
Yeah. Everyone knew. Everyone knew. There's another person, and I can't say their name. They are a household, well-known conservative never-Trumper. Well-known. Everyone knows this person. He was asked to be a member of the Lincoln Project in 2019, and he replied, "I will never do anything with John Weaver. That man is a creep." Karl Rove was talking about this in the year 2000. So the idea that George Conway, that the only people who did not know were the members of the Lincoln Project, is a lie. And I know it's a lie because other young men came forward saying, "I reached out to Mike Madrid, co-founder of Lincoln Project. He said nothing. I reached out to Sarah. I can't remember her last name right now. She's a top person in Lincoln Project. She said nothing." Actually, no, she did say that she heard about it and did nothing. I know for a fact Mally Drunk Fast knew about it over the summer and was trying to get the story suppressed. I know all. They all knew. They all knew. They were complicit. They were silent. They were cowards. And even worse than them was that after my story came out on January the 11th, members of the Lincoln Project were on MSNBC and CNN 17 times. 17 times. And not once were they asked about John Weaver. The media ran cover for them, ran cover for a pedophile, ran cover for a predator, and ran cover for an organization that was used for two things: grifting to make people rich, and used as a grooming outlet for John Weaver to reach young men. And they ran cover, and they had no problem with it.
And some of these exchanges that are now being transcribed in these stories, it's really disgusting. I mean, the stuff he would say. We just read one.
Whatever you've seen, I have worse.
Oh.
Whatever you've seen, I guarantee you I have worse. I'm not releasing the most disgusting ones because, one, I'm not out to embarrass him personally. No one needs to know the size of his genitals, like I unfortunately have to know, and no one needs to know some of the graphic details of what he told these young men he wanted to do with them.
Oh my gosh. And I guess my next question would be, what is the Lincoln Project originally was supposed to end when Trump, when they finally succeeded in getting Trump out of office? I don't think by the reports you see about how effective the Lincoln Project actually was, I don't know how much they had to do with that, but Trump is out of office. So is this kind of going to be the final nail in their coffin? Is this going to be the end of the Lincoln Project?
Well, members are jumping ship. I doubt the names, the ones who are on TV all the time, will jump ship. I mean, the other ones, Mike Madrid has left. The one who hosted their podcast left. He's taking the podcast with him, apparently. Members are leaving. I don't know if it's going to be the big names. George Conway is only semi-affiliated with them anymore. I don't know if he's even affiliated with them anymore since his underage daughter started posting out his personal information online. But there's very few members who are really members of it anymore. But I doubt they're all going to go away because they're kind of branded with it. But I hope even if you're a liberal and you're a donor and you have money and you've given the Lincoln Project, they did not do the right thing. These are not good people who heard about this and fired John Weaver. They let this go until they couldn't let it go anymore.
Exactly.
These are bad. Go donate to the DNC or some environmental organization. Do not donate to these people. They're wasting your money anyway, and they are truly, truly bad people.
And Ryan, I know you've heard this clip before because it's all over Twitter, but I do want to play you a little bit of this and just get your reaction before we go. This is cut one.
Thanks for being on this morning. I'd be remiss not to ask you about the story about John Weaver, who is a founding member of the Lincoln Project. 21 men accusing him of online harassment. Your organization has a pretty clear statement on this kind of harassment, but wanted to ask you directly about this issue.
Yeah, it's terrible and awful and appalling and unfathomable. I didn't know John very well. I frankly only spoke to him a couple of times on the phone early on in the Lincoln Project. It's almost, I don't even know what to say. It's just terrible. And it leaves me speechless, frankly.
Ryan, that was George Conway, as you know, a member of the Lincoln Project. I don't know if he still is, but my question for you is, out of the two things he said, what is the least believable? Is one, that he's surprised at these allegations, or two, that he did not know John Weaver well?
I don't know what his relationship with John Weaver is, so I can't judge into that. Maybe he didn't know him well. They were all working from different states, and last year was COVID, so maybe they didn't see each other that much or didn't, whatever. I don't know. It is impossible that he did not know. It is impossible that he did not know. This man has worked his wife and he have worked in political circles for decades. It is impossible that he did not know. Every time I turned a corner, someone had already known all the allegations. If you work in politics long enough, you hear enough rumors about enough people. More than I ever wanted to know, and I'm not going to digress because most of it is truly just what someone wants to do in their personal life and in their private life. John Weaver was not trying to hide this.
Right.
This was through Twitter. He was doing this through Twitter. He was following thousands of young men on Twitter. Thousands he was following. And no one sat there and said, John, that's really odd. These are men who live on Twitter. They live on Twitter each and every day. This is like their whole entire life. John, you're following 10,000 people. They're almost all young men in college. What's that about, John? Or, John, we've been hearing these things over and over and over, dating back to the year 2000. I want to make it perfectly clear. This was 100 men who have come forward so far. It's not 5. It's not 10. It's not that I heard this story once. 100. Bill Cosby would blush at this number. There is no bleeping way they did not know that this was going on. And I know it because I have young men who sat there and said, I addressed it to them, not to George Conway, but to other members of the Lincoln Project. They ignored it. They denied it. They refused to do anything about it. And one of their advisors was trying to get the story killed from me.
Ryan Girdusky.
So, trust me, no way.
Thank you so much for being with us. Ryan, where can people find your stuff? I know you have a book out. If people want to read your stuff, you're an excellent guest. I hope to have you on again. And I give you so much props for never giving up on this story. You were really, really responsible for bringing a lot of this to light, and you should be very proud. Ryan, where can people find you on Twitter, and where can they read your stuff?
Twitter at Ryan Girdusky. My book is called They Were Not Listening, How the Elites Created the National Populist Revolution. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and everywhere books are sold. And I have a website, ryangirdusky.com, that you can read all my former and old stories. Thank you so much, guys. That's Ryan Girdusky. This story is it keeps getting worse and worse for the Lincoln Project. And it really goes to show you that when the media wants to cover up something, they go all in. They leave it all out in the field. We'll be right back with more. 844-500-4242. We'll get to your calls on the other side. I'm Grace, and this is The Grace Curley Show.
Follow Grace on Twitter at @G_Curley.